Hi, everyone. JB back again with episode 12 of Did You Ever Wonder? Topic today is Fayetteville as Muse. That is, some examples of Fayetteville as it appears in literature. I've got a couple of books here I'll talk about a little bit later, one by A.W. Harrington, the other by Murray Sheehan. And let's start with A.W. Harrington, who wrote under the pen name of Charles Summerfield. Harrington was an incredible character in his writing style, was just as incredible as he was. He was here during the amazing year of 1839, when there were a number of killings in the area. And anyway, he wrote the books. Actually, this is the same book. It's the one on the left is the New York version, and the one on the right is the Philadelphia version. Lives and Adventures of Desperados of the Southwest, Duelists and Dueling by Charles Summerfield. I like to say they're kind of a combination of mixture of history and the dime novel. Maybe an early version of creative nonfiction. Harrington plays fast and loose with history, but they're very entertaining. His style is entertaining, although it's very flamboyant, his style. He was, like I said, he was a real character. He had been a child evangelist, and his evangelist days kind of came to him because he had two problems, alcohol and women. Look him up, read about him. He's a fascinating character. Anyway, so these stories tell about events of 1839, the killing in town of Nelson or Cherokee during the Trail of Tears, and that was in January. In the summer of 1839, he covers the Wright murder families over in Cane Hill, which he was involved, at least peripherally, and then the assassinations of the Treaty Party Cherokee leaders that led to Sarah Ridge moving to Fayetteville and the establishment of the Fayetteville Female Seminary here at that time. So I ran into this poem by Lillian Rozelle Messenger quite by accident. It's reprinted in a local paper, the Arkansas Sentinel, January 12th, 1881. Mrs. Messenger was sending her son to school here, to the U of A. She'd lived here, and she wanted everybody to be nice to her boy when he came to the Arkansas Industrial University, which of course was renamed University of Arkansas in 1899. I was going to read you just a little bit of To Fayetteville was the name of the poem. Oh, beautiful gem of the mountains where the wild briars rose and the vine, and gleaming of rivers and fountains with nature's rare music entwined. I send you a trust that is dear, a young life with hope that is keeping, the soul with full promise beguiled, the music of all joy that is keeping folded up in the heart of my child. Oh, give him, my friends, of your learning, your wisdom and power and love. That was Mrs. Messenger. He wrote it back in Washington, D.C. in December of 1880. As I pointed out when it was published. That's a sweet little poem. And from long ago, this is one of those pure accident ran into that poem. I'm not sure how many people have ever run into it before. And here's a picture of Mrs. Messenger. You can see her dates, 1843, 1921. She's buried back in D.C. And her son, the one that came here, North Overton Messenger, great name, huh? He died just 4 years after his mom and shares a gravestone with her. Next in my little survey here is Murray Sheehan, another character here locally. Here's his dates, Murray Sheehan. He was a professor of journalism here before Walter Lemke came. And I think I mentioned him before. He rode a horse to class to teach every day, which qualifies him as a character right there. Anyway, his novel, Half Gods, published in 1927. It's set in a fictional Missouri town, but there's absolutely no question that that town is actually Fayetteville. And the University of Arkansas Special Collections has maybe more than one copy, but one copy they have, someone in the side, on the side of the page has written down the names of the actual people that are coded, if you will, the coded names in the novel. And those are very handy to find out who they are. But the bottom line is it's a strange novel, but it's a very scathing indictment of what you might call provincial Fayetteville. So if you ever get a chance, it's a very interesting read. Now, another guy just around this time, and I've talked about him in episode 7, is the poet George Ballard. You can see his dates there. He became famous in 1924, became well known anyway, because he wrote a poem upon the death of Woodrow Wilson, and it got sent around to newspapers all over the United States. So it gave him some recognition. And in 1928, if you just 4 years later, he published Ozark Ballads, which just makes me smile every time I see that title. I love it. So I think creative and fun, the Ozark Ballads, published by the Democrat Publishing Company, edited and collected, so to speak, by Leslie Stringfellow Reed, the editor of the Fayetteville Daily Democrat at the time. Now, in episode 7, I think I read from this before, but here's a little bit of the centennial again. Yeah, which he read this poem for the Fayetteville Centennial, July 4th, 1928. If you wanted looking back to see how time has flown, just look around in Fayetteville and see how she has grown. Our streets are paved with concrete, our electric lights aglow. Our homes were lit with candle 100 years ago. We have the same old babbling brooks, same old rivers flow. But Fayetteville is not the same 100 years ago. I have to say that every time I read Ballard, the more I like him and the more I like this poem. I think I mentioned in the other episode, I sure hope that when we have the bicentennial, which is 8 years from now in 2028, that they will again read this poem of Mr. Ballard's. And the other guy that I talked about in episode 7 was Charles Morrow Wilson. He was considered a genius from an early age, which I'm not sure was all that healthy for him to be told that constantly, but he was a brilliant man. And he was another protege of Charles J. Finger. And like I said, I covered him in episode 7 before. I've got 2 books here of his, just to show you. A Man's Reach, 1944, which is a later one than the other one on the right, but I did it first because this is one that's about Fayetteville. It's actually a fictionalized novel about Archibald Yell, who y'all probably know is one of the more famous people that ever lived here, second governor of the state. And the Rabble Rouser, which is over there, it was published earlier in 36. It's set in Izard County, but it does have some Fayetteville characters and locales in it. And then we're going to jump across time to Professor Donald Harrington from the University of Arkansas. He was an art history professor. He wrote some 14, 15 novels, passed away in 2009, as you can see. Much of his work is set in a fictional town called Staymore, which, as I understand it, is actually based on the little community town, city, whatever you call it, of Drake's Creek over Madison County, where I believe his grandparents lived and where he spent a lot of time as a young man. But anyway, the first one I got here is the architecture of the Arkansas Ozarks, or the Tau, as everybody kind of refers to it, from 1975. I love that little Zen action there. And that has Fayetteville appears in that. And it also appears in his nonfiction work, Let Us Build a City, which I believe, 1986, which I believe grew out of his U of A thesis. Well, maybe not U of A thesis, but his master's thesis, I guess, a series of townships. Anyway, and more just recently, I think last fall would be 2020, maybe it's 2019, but I think 2020, a book called Double Toil and Trouble, which also is another Staymore novel. It was a novel in stories, was published posthumously. So Mr. Harrington is one of the people who uses Fayetteville in his work. And then we get, wait a minute here now, what's going on here? Who is this? Yes, here's truly my short novel, Tin Hollow, is about Fayetteville. It's about, let me put it this way, it's about a town fictionally referred to as Jefferson, which is located between Greenland and Johnson. So you might be able to guess what that is. Anyway, it's a combination of, I use some of my baseball research I use for the Angels in the Ozarks. Some of you may have seen that, my baseball history book about professional baseball here in the area. And it's also uses the research I've done on the extraordinary amount of corruption that was here in Fayetteville in the 1930s. You can see some of that in my other work. Anyway, so, well, 10 Hollow anyway is, I've written a prequel short story, this novella, and then I wrote a sequel novella. I don't know how that's all going to play out. Right now, the only thing is this guy right here. My publisher Ogma Creative Media, plans to make a series out of this, but I won't be writing that series. Anyway, so that's my little, hopefully brief visit with books and so forth that include the Fayetteville on them. Well, there's one other I need to mention. Apparently, a fellow named Bernie Hanna, his I guess U of A MFA thesis was a novel about Fayetteville, but I've not seen it, just seen the wording on it or information about it. Anyway, so if you like this and want to talk, respond, tell me some more books, poems, and so forth that might be about Fayetteville. So anyway, for the time being, that's it for episode 12. Thanks very much. Stay safe, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.